Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You watch it on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now, having talked to former Washington coach Ron Rivera, whom you're going to hear from in a minute. And I talked to Rivera about his coaching future. Wasn't sure if he'd want to retire. Well, he does not. Why he wants to continue, what he thinks of Josh Harris as an owner. Remember, this is the guy who just fired him a week ago, and what he thinks of him. So I don't know that you'd be surprised, but I think you'd probably be pleased. The coach-centric model, what he thinks about it now, how that came about, his regret of how he handled the Sam Howell situation initially. So we get into all that. Yes, there are going to be some questions that you say, why didn't you ask this? Well, because I had 35 minutes and there's some things you're not going to get to. And there are some things I wish I'd been able to get to if I had 35 more minutes, because we could have gone down a lot more roads. But I appreciate him joining me, because it's never easy to talk about a week later about, hey, why did it not work when you were a coach here in the end? He also talks about the public reception he's had when he's gone out to dinner a couple of times. And I think that's made him probably feel a little bit better. So going to get into all of that. And so stay tuned in a minute for my interview with Ron Rivera. Before that, not a whole lot new on the coaching front. We know who they're interested in. Keep repeating that. We know that they're going to have a virtual interview with Dan Quinn on Thursday, and then with Ben Johnson on Friday. They've also either talked to or will talk to Aaron Glenn, Mike McDonald, Anthony Weaver, Raheem Morris, and then Bobby Slowick. And they can start the in-person interviews next week. So we'll monitor all that. But today I'm just going to play my conversation with former Washington coach Ron Rivera. So here it is. Well, first, Ron, I am curious, what the last week or so has been like for you. What's ever since the move was made, and what's it been like?
It's been interesting. It really has. I mean, I've had a lot of opportunity to reflect and look back and think about things that we did accomplish, things we didn't, that I wish we would have. And more so just because I think there are opportunities to be better than we finished in terms of record and all that. That's probably my biggest disappointment more than anything else. I think, again, we came in and we were fortunate enough to win a division our first year, but I think that kind of threw some of the expectations out of whack. And then just kind of being right there in the middle of the last 2 years. And then this year, I took a big gamble. I put a lot on Sam, and now as I reflected on that, the thing I probably shouldn't have put as much pressure on him. And I think that was probably one of the mistakes I made this year. The biggest one I think I made was I put way too much on him, and he didn't deserve to have that put on him. He's a good young quarterback who has some talent and some ability. And, I should have, I think that's something I should have backed off on.
And how so? Was it just by announcing him as a starter, or what other way? Were there other ways that you felt like there was more?
I think I should have kept emphasizing he was going to be the guy that got the first opportunity. Okay. You know what I'm saying? To be QB1, not that he's coming in as QB1. He's going to have the first opportunity. I think just phrasing it that way would have taken a lot of pressure off of him. Just kind of, that he hadn't been anointed. And I think that's kind of the mistake I made, because the perception came out wrong, and that's on me.
How did you feel he handled that? Did you feel like it a little bit, or?
No, I think he handled it tremendously well. He really did, but he shouldn't have had to have as much pressure as he had, in my opinion. And that's, like I said, that's not me because of the way I put it out there. If I put it out there, that this guy's going to start off as the first guy getting the first opportunity, and emphasize opportunity, continue to emphasize the opportunity. I think it came across wrong. I think it was taken wrong, but I could have presented it better, to be honest.
And there are times, because obviously when you're talking to the media all the time, or you're going to say things that can be, either misconstrued, or maybe it doesn't go quite the way you want. Are there some times like that where you feel like, oh, I wish I had said this differently or better?
Oh, constantly. And I'll be honest, just because of um, this particular group of reporters, I think, you know, I felt there were several people that are looking for the "I got you" moments, the aha moment. Oh, see, okay, you're contradicting yourself instead of really trying to, you know, I think everybody's always trying to interpret what you say, and there's not necessarily a hidden meaning to what I say or anybody that you're interviewing is saying. And I think that's one of the things that I always found difficult because, I would walk away and I would ask Sean DeBarbier, did I say something wrong? Did I put it wrong? And we'd have to go back and look at it. And he'd sometimes get me the transcripts so I could, reread them. Um, and to me, that's frustrating at times that people want to, translate what you're saying or try and interpret it. And one of the things that I always hate is when a month and a half later somebody says, well, back in August you said, well, shit, I'm entitled to change my opinion. I'm entitled to change my mind. I'm saying? It's my prerogative. Because again, I'm trying to get to what the best decision, the best, situation is for us. And that was one of my frustrations as well.
Were there times though where you would look and say, yeah, maybe I could have here, or were
Yep.
there times
Oh,
where you say, okay,
absolutely. Absolutely, John. I mean, I'm trust me, I know I'm not infallible. I know that, in retrospect, it's easy to go back and say, gee, I wish I'd done that. And sometimes, that happens. And the only real, to me, the only real thing you can do about it is just take ownership of it.
and then and again, I'm going to focus on like some of the things that you said. There are things you wish you could have gone better. When you look at like the offensive line, when you came in, that was a big emphasis, build the trenches, right? How did you feel that went? And just how did you feel it went?
Well, I don't think it went as well as I would have loved it to, just because, the first and the hardest thing we had to deal with obviously was right off the bat with Trent. I mean, the dude's a phenomenal player, and if there had been any way we could have worked something out and keep, I mean, he's a generational left tackle. He comes in, he plays 12, 15 years. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, and his athleticism and who he is as a player. I mean, that was special. And then you had, a right guard, and that's special. And we couldn't work anything out with him. We constantly had to always try and figure out how we can keep him, and then eventually you just can't afford to keep him anymore.
With Trent, because did you feel, because you had the meeting with him, and it seemed like it went pretty well.
Yep.
Was there anything that you could have done differently, or did you feel like that? Because I know, initially there you had said you wanted guys to show what they could do with your group, so how is that accurate? And was there anything you could have done differently?
What I would have loved to have seen is just the ability to have him come in and go through a mini camp and watch these guys. I mean, it's happened to me twice where you go in and you don't get to look at the players, you don't get a chance to have them truly around and find out who's who, and then go into the draft, okay, and then decide, okay, what's the most important thing that you have to do? You know what I'm saying? We were going off of the tape. We were going off of, in some cases, some guys had very limited tape. Okay, we were going off of what we had as far as analytics, and then trying to interpret all those things for players without really knowing the players. I think that was one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with in both my stints as a head coach, is that first year trying to evaluate. When I was in Carolina, you're going off of what people were telling you. Well, the hard part is they don't necessarily know what fits what you're trying to do. And in some cases, the player is maybe better suited for something different. And that's something that we learned through the process of training camp, not, the beginning of the off-season workout program, week 1, phase 1, week, 3, phase 2, week 7, we're week 7. Now you're in phase 3 and then minicamp. I mean, those things are all very important evaluation tools, and we didn't get to evaluate it all. So that was a frustration for us. But not being able to get something work out with Trent, that was hard because I would have loved to have seen him. And when you get a chance to see a guy like that, you sit there and go, oh my God. I mean, you say we can watch him on tape, but remember, he didn't play the most of last, that year before. And, because they were having issues with him, it was probably very hard for him also to forgive, what had happened to him. And I respect that. And that was one of the things. And my conversations with him were terrific. I see, why he's so special, especially when you watch him now, and he's still going at this age.
Yeah.
And then the other frustration was, then you come in and you've got, one of the premier right guards who's still playing at a high level, and you can't do anything to get his contract taken care of because basically when it should have been done, it didn't get done. And that's the hard part.
And I want to get to some of that stuff in a minute, but I would like to stay current right now. You got a chance to work for Josh Harris for 5-6 months or whatever it is. What were your impressions of him and the ownership group?
First of all, dude's busy.
Yeah.
It's hard to nail him down. And then when you get him, you've got to keep him focused in on what you need. But he's all in. He wants to win. He's very thoughtful. He thinks and processes everything before any decisions are made. And he's really trying to take it all in. And I just believe everything he does, he thinks out first, he calculates it, and then he goes out and he, in my opinion, then he decides and does what he believes he needs to do.
How would you like to have come in under him?
Oh, I would have loved to start from the beginning. You know what I'm saying, with come in with a clean slate. I think that's kind of where the organization is right now. I think the organization is a very good position. If there's one thing that we can say over the 4 years is that I think the culture is headed in the direction it needs to be headed. I think obviously with 5 picks in the top, 110 or 115, whatever it is, there's an opportunity to start fresh with a young group of guys added to the veterans that they select and decide to keep around. That I think really helps the organization going forward.
You came in under obviously the coach-centric model. Is that something that you wanted, or is that something Dan said he wanted and you just kind of fulfilled it?
That's something that was brought to me and discussed. You as a coach always love to have the final decision on game day. You want to be able to control the 53, and that's really, I think, to me what really helps a coach is to be able to have those things.
So how did you feel that went for you? And is it, in hindsight, would you rather have had a different model?
Oh, I think I would have loved a different model just because, well, in hindsight, yes. Because now you really see how much more time, you spend on personnel. And as a coach, that's not necessarily what you want to do, in my opinion. What I really enjoyed more than anything else the last 5 weeks was just being right in the middle of everything as far as coaching. I mean, that was a completely different thing because, now you're immersed. Now your only focus is just that one thing. And that's really what I think coaches really have to, you that's what you do. You want to teach.
You still want to coach?
Oh yeah. I enjoyed the heck of it. I really do. And that's quite honestly, John, that's what I do. I got away from it for 3.5 seasons and really felt like I was more of a manager. Things kept coming across. I mean, just stupid stuff at times too would come to me that made no sense that it was being brought to me.
Like what? Anything you can say?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It was just stuff that, it shouldn't have been put on the head coach's plate. But at the time when I was dealing with it, I wasn't necessarily the head coach as much as I was, the manager.
What, and as far as coaching continues, like, would you want to only be a head coach? Would you say I'd be open to being a defensive coordinator, coaching in college? What would you have in mind?
I think right now what we've decided is keep all the options open. We've had some conversations with some people and some teams, and we're really just kind of waiting to see what happens after this week. This weekend is where everybody's expecting, the movement to start and begin. And obviously we've taken the approach that we're gonna wait it out. We're gonna listen. I have several opportunities right now. I just want to make sure it's the right one more than it is anything else.
Opportunities in the NFL?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Would it be hard to go back and be a DC after being a head coach for so long?
No, not where I am in my career. And I do know this, sometimes you do have to take a step back. I mean, I took a step back from being a coordinator to being a position coach. And 2 years later or 3 years later, I come back and have the number one defense in the league. So, to me, you take a step back, shoot, you learn and grow from it. It's like I told our players, if you look at this year as a lost year, you're screwing yourself. But you should look at it as a year to learn and understand why. Things happen to people. They don't have, they don't happen to people. Things happen for people. And to me, this was probably the greatest learning experience I've had in a while this year. I mean, there a lot of things came to light at certain times this past season that I think going forward will really help me. I really believe that.
Like what? Anything in particular?
Well, I think it goes back to stuff like, when you delegate the authority, there are certain things that you have to always make sure you stay into. I think one thing too is establishing the chain of command and making sure that it's clear cut in every facet of the organization. That was one of the things that there really was some things that people were ambivalent to, and you can't have that. There can be no, there can't be any question or doubt. One of the things that I wish I had gotten a little bit more to was I was being told what I needed to know, not what people thought I wanted to know. That was another thing that I probably needed to make more clear with people.
And some of that too, and I think you and I talked about this during the year. There were a couple of times where I'd have players say like, "Oh, the first few years, Ron was really available to us. You can go and maybe this year, I think with Eric coming in and taking more of the I don't want to say power, but certainly having a big say in things." Yep. They wanted were you as available to them. Is that part of what you're talking about?
Yes, because I will say this too, and this is one of the things that when I came in, that we wanted to try and establish, but there was no place to establish it, and that was an office downstairs for the players to come see me. When I was in Carolina, going into my third season, one of the things that I did was I captured a space, or literally right next to the cafeteria, and then right next to the meeting rooms, and then right next to the front door. So when the players came in, one of the first things they saw their way in was my office door. And it got to the point where I could come downstairs and there would be 2 or 3 guys sitting in the couch watching, Good Morning Football. And so it was easy to communicate right then and there. And then when I would do my morning meeting, I wouldn't do my morning meeting and then go into my upstairs office, which is, a floor away, and you've got to walk past the receptionist, you walk past the GM's office, you walk past the scouts. No, if I finished my meeting, I would go right into my office right next door to the team meeting room, the players meeting rooms, the cafeteria, and the entrance, and guys could readily come by and you can build those relationships. I didn't get that opportunity and because there really was no space, and that's probably one of the biggest problems with that facility right now is there's just not enough room, and we've tried to cannibalize that building as much as we can to make it football centric, and you still don't have enough room. You just don't.
I think if it were a realtor putting on the market, they describe it as charming because there's the room. But the other part of that too is, again, when Eric came in, you did give him a lot of say. Yep. Was there, how do you balance that? Because was there almost too much say at times, or do you feel good about how that, how do you feel?
I felt good. I felt good about it, but I think the perception of it was that it was, that I gave him too much. I don't think so. I think the thing that I really wanted to at certain points was I wanted the players to go to him,
right?
Work it out with him, not with me. I mean, again, if you want something done, go to that source. Work, and that's what I thought happened during training camp. When that, I had made my statement trying to show my support for the guy, apparently got misconstrued. There was people interpreting what I was saying, and really, trying to get the players to go see him and develop that relationship, get to understand what he was trying to teach and why he was trying to teach it. I'd made mention that I thought a few guys had aha moments during that day, because when it goes back to when I was playing, I can remember, back in the day, during training camp, I can remember Jim McMahon getting all over Matsui for running his route too short, and not being where he needed to be. And I can remember that, the confrontation they had, and it was about, you're not deep enough. You're supposed to give me 5 yards. You only gave me 2. And, Matt's screaming back, no, I got there. I got to where I needed to be. And I'm sitting there going, why are they, so after practice, when we started watching film, I'm sitting there and I'm watching this play comes up. And sure enough, it was a high-low, designed at the linebacker. And so what Matt didn't do is Matt didn't get beyond the line of scrimmage at 5 yards. He got from where he started, he got 5 yards deep. But from the line of scrimmage, he needed to get 5 yards deep. And the idea was to pull the linebacker down so the ball gets thrown over my head to a guy that's running a deeper dig. And those were the kind of moments that I thought some of our players were beginning to have, and they're beginning to understand why Eric was coaching the way he was, why he was demanding the things that he was demanding. That you've got to be precise. Your precision is so important in today's game. The timing of the ball getting released and the timing of your route all dictates what happens in front of you. And that was, and again, that to me was for them to work out with Eric, so they understood. I saw that work in one time as well with when I watched Norv Turner back in the day when I was in San Diego with him, working with Phillip Rivers and Vincent Jackson, and those guys, and trying to get them to understand why you ran the route the way you did, why your complementary routes around them had to be there at timing. And that was my whole point about giving Eric the opportunity to try and get people to understand those things.
You've described yourself too as an optimist, and your loyalty is a big deal for you. That can be very good. Did that also maybe sometimes trip you up as well? And because it's a balancing act there. And sometimes if you win, it's a good thing. If you lose, it's maybe not. So how would you assess that?
I think you're right. I think you nailed it. It is a balancing act. And there are some times when again, it's one of the things growing up the way I did, where one thing my father always got across, because he was an Army officer, it was always about respect the chain of command. There's a commanding officer, there's an XO, and then it filters down. And so that's kind of the way I approach things. And, I think, again, when you look at it in hindsight, maybe there were a couple of things I could have intervened in and probably should have. Again, but that's hindsight, just looking back, because, we start out and, we're playing pretty decent, doing some good things, but then some things caught up to us.
Anything in particular?
Well, I just think, there's a certain point where we didn't play as well as we would like to, obviously. And for specific reasons, we had to, or we should have been better. And when we started to get better, the other side didn't play as well as it needed to.
As you left here, like, you felt like this was in a better place, and you can look at the record. Obviously the records are what they are, but where is it where you would say it's better here?
Well, I think, first of all, I think the character level of the young men that we have in. I mean, we had some guys with speeding tickets, stuff like that, but it's nothing that was concerning to a point where you really worry about what's going on. We didn't have that, and that was one of the things that we tried to eliminate. Obviously, we we're able to change a lot of things around the facility and make it a better facility for the players. I think, just trying to establish those types of things and fight through all the things that we had to, and again, just trying to put everything in place so that, next year, to me, I think can be a pretty seamless transition for everybody.
Obviously, you had to deal with a lot here.
Mhm.
We all know the odds, and now, and obviously, it doesn't necessarily have to affect who you're bringing in as a player or
Mhm.
this and that. So there could be two separate things. But what was the challenge with dealing with all that and then trying to shield it from the players?
That's exactly was the challenge, is trying to shield it from the players. And there was one point I can remember one year when one of the things I was dealing with, I can't remember exactly what it was offhand, but one of the guys had come up and asked me a question about something. And I said to them, I said, well, this is what we've done. This is how we've handled it. And they go, oh, I didn't know that happened. And so that was the thing that we're trying to do. But then always the hard part too was, members of the media, they wanted players' reaction to everything. Well, the truth of the matter is, if it's not happening on the football field and if it's not immediately impacting them, why would we bring that up? That was the hard part for me, was that I was always trying to deflect it. I was always trying to take it. And quite honestly, some of the things that, you try to deflect, some of the things that you try to absorb and keep out of the limelight, really on another aspect should be brought to the light, should be, talked about. But, we're trying to win football games. We're trying to, take all that stuff and keep it out of the way.
How much did the cancer impact how you felt things went, especially the first couple of years?
Um, I think the first year it was, you know, I the first year was really hard just because, you know, going from treatments in the morning, leaving the house at about 6 o'clock, getting to the hospital around 6:20, and being one of the first patients to go through your treatments, and then trying to get back in time to be there for the 8 o'clock meeting. Half the time I made it, half the time I didn't, was because, to me, that first meeting, you set the tone for the day. And so I relied on the coaches to help me out. I thought Jack was terrific with that. I thought Scott handled it well. And I thought when Randy Jordan had to take over a couple of times, he was excellent as well. So I had a good group of coaches that really took on a lot of responsibilities. And quite honestly, that wasn't as hard as the second and third year, because I think as the second year wore on, with battling through COVID and all that as well, there were times when me personally, I just didn't feel it. But then at certain times I would find it, I would rally and we would get it rolling. But, that was a tough year just because at the end of the year we had that terrible car accident.
Right.
And then everything just kind of fell apart, with guys getting COVID and trying to play, through that, and, getting the Philly game moved and, barely losing that game, and, having to pluck a quarterback, and with only 2 days of practice, he plays. I mean, those were the types of things that we dealt with and just kept trying to fight through, and we were close. And then last year, obviously, and arguably in a few of those games that we played at the end of the year, we didn't get the breaks we should have got. Um, not looking to blame anybody, but it just, we didn't get those situations falling our way. So we lost out on the chance to get into the playoffs there.
Quarterback, obviously, that was the infamous, hey, what the difference, quarterback, and, not having someone experienced and all that. How much of that, when you look back at how that position went, was that we go back to your optimism? Did you have, does that play a factor in maybe thinking guys could do certain things, or is it just didn't work for whatever reason?
Well, I think when we first got here, the biggest thing obviously was Dwayne the guy or
Right.
not? And again, as I said, not having, the opportunity to evaluate early on, I think set us back a little bit. And so going into the first season, trying to get him going, and then see what we had as far as backups, and then, getting Kyle the opportunity, and Kyle breaking his ankle, And then, having Alex step in, and again, Alex was tremendous. He was a perfect style quarterback for what we were trying to do. He knew how to manage the game and could make the plays that were needed when it was time. But, you always worry about that leg. And that was always the big concern. But, dude was a true pro, and I think he set a good tone. And then, we get Taylor, and next thing you know, Taylor's a folk hero. He's, he was an exciting guy to watch play.
And Sam, like, what happened? What do you think happened to Sam over the last month? And can he? I mean, obviously, when a team has a number 2 pick and it's a new regime, you typically anticipate them taking a quarterback that high. But what's your assessment of Sam over that last month and then going forward?
I think the hard part for Sam and the unfair part was, again, just the inconsistency up front more than anything else. I think that was the hard part. Our offensive line was patchwork by then, and it was, probably the biggest thing too was when Tyler was struggling with that knee down that stretch, and it just, he couldn't play anymore, and that was hard. And then getting Nick back, and then Nick really played well, but again, by then we were into our third and fourth tackles playing, and moving guys around. It just, a guard was difficult, and just there was no consistency there for him. I think that was one of the hard parts for him. And who we played down the stretch too. It wasn't like, this was spread out where, 1 week you're playing somebody that's a great defense, and and then on and on. It was like 4 or 5 weeks of top 10 defenses.
What do you think of his future in the NFL?
Oh, I think he's got the skill set to play in this league. I do, and I think he can be a starting quarterback. He's hopefully, he'll have a chance to reset and review and look at things, and whoever is going to coordinate, if they give him an opportunity to compete, I think he'll compete well.
What's it been like for you when you've been out in public a few times? What kind of reaction are you getting there? And is it, because it's got to, when you go through something so public, it's hard for a lot of people to understand what that's like. And most people would never go through that if they lose their job.
No, and you're right. And I will say this, the people that I've come across, and Stephanie, she can vouch for this, have been tremendous. They really have. It's funny because most of the people, and in fact, yesterday I counted it just to tell Stephanie, it was like 15 people had come up to me at different points in time, and they all started pretty much the same way. I've been a Washington Redskins fan from the beginning. I grew up out here. I love this team, and man, the way you handled yourself, the way you finished things off and try to get things going, that was really great, coach. Great effort, man. And sorry it didn't work out. But that's how it starts. We went to dinner a couple nights back, myself and Stephanie and one of our coaches and his wife, and we sat down and we had dinner, and so I was going to pay for dinner, and the waitress says, "Oh, no, somebody over here took care of it." I said, "Well, who did?" She said, "Oh, they want me to tell you." I said, "No, please, I need to go over and say thank you." And so she tells me, so I go over into the next room and I introduce myself, and before I even got a chance, to finish, she says, "Hey, coach, I know, hey, the deck was stacked against you, man, but I'm a longtime Redskin fan and really respected how you handled everything, and just wanted to show you that not everybody out here was out to get you. Everybody was." There's a lot of us that were really proud of the way you handled things for us. And, and boy, it looks like the team can be in a real good spot next year. And, so we got to talking about some things, and it was really cool. So that's how it really has. That's how it's been. It's been positive. And, as far as, what we tried to do and people understanding, that when you hear that, that makes it worthwhile. It really does.
What do you think the future is for this franchise now with, again, the Harris group in here? You got to work with them. What do you think the future is for here?
Well, I think it's positive. I really do. I think what Mr. Harris and his group want to do and the way they're going to approach things, I think it's going to be very efficient. I think the focus is now on the football team. And I think one of the first focuses for them should be about seeing if they can get the old RFK Stadium. I think that would be very beneficial to the organization for a couple of reasons. One is it's going to cut down on the commute to that stadium. Yeah. Believe it or not, that was one of the things that we worried about every day was our players getting to the game on time, because it's tough to get in and out of. Secondly, is and I know one of the things they talked about was building a world-class facility for the players, a practice facility that's world-class. I mean, and I know that, they've seen some of the other places and looked at the things that they needed to do. And that's the right attitude. One of the things that I learned from John Madden was every year you have to show the players you're doing something to get better. And if you don't, they're thinking, oh, you just think everything's fine. But with them talking about how they want to change things, with them saying, hey, this is what we want to do, and then going out and doing some of those things, that means a lot to the players. And this group came in with no qualms about knowing, hey, we've got a lot of things we got to work on. And they went to work on it right away. They changed that atmosphere in training camp. They really did. Yeah. And that made a huge difference, in my opinion, for the players. They saw the hope. And again, it'll come back. It really will, just because of who they are. This is a group that's, their business is professional sports. And because you look at all things they're involved with, and you just know this for real. This to me is exciting for this group of people.
How hard was it to trade Montez?
That was hard. It was something I obviously in retrospect, you just go back and say, you know what, that was something that, that was hard.
I mean, he's pretty good defensive end, hard to find, salary an issue. And it seemed like the building wanted to go a different way, just for how you want to roster construct, I guess.
Right. And then that's probably the biggest thing, is the paradigm shift is there. I mean, you go back, you look at things, and you say, okay, this is how you build it. The build is going to be through the middle. You have to start with your franchise quarterback, then you got to protect them. And like I said, through the middle is going to be, quarterback, center, guard. Okay. And then on defense, it's going to be the two tackles, the middle linebacker, and the safety. I mean, that's the paradigm shift. And when we got here, it was, hey, we're building the line, we're building the lines. And that was, that's a little contrary to what they want to do now. So I really think that, they have a plan, and it's being formulated, it's being tweaked, it's being changed. And I think they're started off, obviously, when I got their general manager.
You know much about Adam?
Only from what I've heard. I know that John spoke very, very highly of him. I mean, they worked together in San Francisco those years. Martin knew him. I talked to Martin a little bit about him, and Martin was very positive about who he is. So I think that they did, they did their homework, obviously, in terms of preparing for this moment.
Right. I got about 2 minutes left. Any message you want to leave with the fans or anything, just summing up your time?
No, probably the biggest thing more than anything else is I understand and respect just how passionate they are, and how much they want to win, and they want to be able to get behind this team. And I can see why. This is a tremendous community, and it really is about football. Football does set the tone and tempo for this area. And it really kind of brings and unites people together. And, with what Mr. Harris and his group wants to do, I think the future is bright. I do. And there's a good group of young players that are eager to go out and, show people who they are. And so I think it bodes well for this community.
Ron, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking so much time.
No, you're welcome, John. It's good to talk to you, man.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Ron Rivera for joining me. Again, never easy to sit there and talk about why didn't it work in the end when you were a coach. So I respect and appreciate the fact that he came on. Also, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back on Friday with another podcast, YouTube show. So talk to you next time.